Welcome to Horror Movies with TNA. Each episode, we're going to pick a film, talk about it, and rate it. Word of warning, there will be spoilers. This week, we're talking about...
Theatre Blood. Oh, we've started.
Today, we're going to be discussing Theatre of
Blood.
Thank you. Directed by Douglas Hickox. Theatre of Blood, 1973.
Yes. Right. The only bit of research I've done is on Dougie Hickox, as I call him.
Dougster. The Dougmeister.
Yeah. And he's done some other films. There you go. That's it. He did Brannigan with John Wayne.
What other films? Anything of note that he did then other than Brannigan?
Not really. Because I was thinking, because some of his shots, and this is... For people that like horror and British horror, I guess, this is a well-known, renowned film. So I was thinking, Douglas Hickox, maybe he did a few before. But he sort of bounced around, sort of, few in the 60s, few more in the 70s, but he finished in the 80s, mainly because he died. It's difficult to do.
That puts an end to your directing career,
it's difficult,
doesn't it?
You're holding the camera.
So the late, great Douglas Hickox directed Theatre of Blood, 73. Just interestingly, I had a quick look of other horror films that came out in that year. Was a good year for horror films. 1973. The Exorcist, obviously.
I've heard that's quite good.
Yeah, I've heard that. Wicker Man and Don't Look Now. Very good film. Yeah, a good pedigree of films, and obviously in Theatre of Blood as well.
Correct.
I'm not going to even attempt to go through all the cast members and all their films, because this film has got a lot of well-known English actors from film and TV. Obviously, Vincent Price is in it as well, but
a lot of British.
A lot of British. To name but a few, we've got Dinah Rigg, Ian Hendry. Ian Hendry, who's kind of the main lead in this.
Awful.
Well, we'll get to that.
Sorry.
He was in Omen 2, The Bitch, Captain Kronos, Tales from the Crypt,
Kronos, yeah,
Get Carter, Repulsion. That's a good CV.
Actually, yeah, Repulsion.
Yeah, so that's really good.
And Tales from the Crypt was good.
Yeah. Harry Andrews as Trevor Dickman. He was in Hawk the Slayer, Superman, Watership Down. He wasn't actually in it, obviously. Coral Brown as Chloe Moon. She did a voice in Xanadu. Isn't that great, eh?
Fucking hell.
Milo O'Shea,
I'm going to say, rewind. I thought you weren't going to go through every fucking...
Well, no, I've written this. If I don't read it, it's a waste of pen.
Yeah, but you just said I'm not going to go through it. You literally just said
I'm not going to go through all the cast. Just the main...
not all the tramps.
The critics circle. Yeah, not the maths drinkers, but Milo O'Shea as Inspector Boot.
Nice brows.
He was in Cheers, Golden Girls, and Digby the Biggest Dog in the World. Now, if you can have that on your CV, you don't need to do anything more, do you, really? Yeah, and that's it. Robert Coote, Jack Hawkins, Michael Hordern, Arthur Lowe, obviously, Eric Sykes, Madeline Smith, Joan Hickson, Miss Marple, and Dinah Dawes. Yeah, sorry, going back to that, she got strangled. That was it.
She got smothered.
She got smothered. Yeah, it's quite. Can we just start by talking about Vincent Price very quickly? I'm not going to name all the films he's been in, but we do need to talk about him. Because to name but a few, House of Wax, The Fly, Return of the Fly, The Tingler, obviously, The Bat, House of Usher, Pit and the Pendulum, Mask of the Red Death, so he loved Edgar Allan Poe, Witchfinder General, or Conqueror Worm, Dr. Phibbs films, From a Whisper to a Scream, Edward Scissorhands more recently, prior to his death. Though the list goes on and on, but obviously loads and loads of... You might almost say he was kind of typecast in his career, but lots and lots of horror films.
Yeah, he didn't really do much other than horror films.
In reading on this, he did say this was one of his favourite films because I think he was a bit frustrated by being typecast, and it gave him an opportunity to do long Shakespearean monologues.
There's something about his acting style in general that really suits his film. Yeah, classing it as a horror, it's borderline horror. Maybe, as a kid, I do remember watching it.
Yeah, my memory had failed me with this one. I had thought prior to watching it again, after 30 years later, that it was scary and quite bloody and gruesome and grim. On revisiting it, it's not quite that. But, yeah, so Vincent Price. But it's worth mentioning him, obviously, because he is a legend of the horror.
Can I talk about the
genre?
Setting, time and place now.
Actually, the setting, time and place is probably more relevant to me, actually. Go on, carry on.
So, Yeah, but it's got it in my book that it says literally set in time and place, and I normally just go, oh, it's the 80s or it's 70s or now or whatever, or the future. But in this particular case, it was very easy because it said Wednesday, March the 15th, 1972.
The very opening scene is our character George Maxwell, played by Michael Hordern, reading the Financial Times. He holds it up to the camera and we can see that it's the 15th of March 72, which interestingly is the day before I was born. The day after I was born. Yes. What about that, eh?
Was it actually, so you're born on the 16th
of March 1972.
Oh, so they didn't make up the date like they would.
They created
a bullshit date. Well, I don't know. The 35th of
October. George Maxwell, a member of the Theatre Critics Circle, the circle of critics who scathing reviews and provocative comments. He's also the chairman of the Bermondsey Housing and Redevelopment Committee, and he's the only one that can handle evicting some squatters that have settled in a building.
Up,
yes,
makes no sense.
Yeah, they're about to tear this building down and he gets a phone call. So this is the very beginning of the film. He has to go and deal with the situation in person. His wife doesn't want him to go because she had a bad dream last night where he'd been eaten by a lion.
Yeah.
George meets two bobbies who escort him through the old building to where the squatters are.
Most of the film doesn't actually make any coherent sense. Not in that it's mad and it's all over the place. It's got a very strong plot. It's just...
It meanders all over the place to get through the plot, doesn't it? It kind of waits for it.
To say it's unlikely, like most horror films are, and I don't have a problem with this, but I guess that this is trying to presume that it's all been set up very cleverly, but...
Yeah, so he turns up in this building and there's lots of homeless meth drinkers, as they're described in the credits as well. They're all described as meth drinkers. When he asks them to leave, they turn on him, hack him to death with broken bottles and bits of wood and axes.
And what I'll say about this bit, out of all of the bits in it, this was the most sort of, not scary-ish. You know,
it was tense, I thought, a little bit tense.
You didn't know, to be honest, I couldn't remember this bit at all, because I had watched this before, but couldn't remember this bit. Maybe I missed it or whatever, but I couldn't remember him running away and you didn't know where he was going to get away.
I think it plays on people's fear of if you had to turf somebody out of your house and they just say, basically, fuck you. Because they turn on him.
Yeah, it was a bit unexpected that they all, he's shouting at him and they're all just dossing, drinking meth, and then suddenly they all get up with a knife and a broken bottle. And...
Yes, they arm themselves and start to attack him. When he turns to help from the bobbies, they remove their disguises to reveal somebody he recognises, and they're part of the attack. And he says, it's you. I did actually quite like this shot because it kind of showed it up through the floor.
Yeah.
As
that was good. And then
Edward Lionheart reveals it's him and he stands over him and a trickle of blood drips through the floorboards.
It's about the best shot in the entire film.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I quite liked it. As he kind of dies and we realise he recognises him as he reveals himself. And that essentially, a few minutes into the film, is the first murder. Of one of the critics.
He gets on with it straight away in that way. And right at the beginning, I also liked, actually, because it had black and white footage.
Of
silent films as well.
I forgot to mention that. Yeah, that beginning credit bit where it had really nice music set alongside the silent movie footage, which was, I think, Shakespearean plays again.
Yeah.
Because obviously this film's all based around Shakespeare. Yeah, really good. That's dead number one. And so begins a tale of revenge, betrayal, murder, and long Shakespearean monologues. Edward Kendall Sheridan Lionheart is in a derelict theatre and he is performing to his flunkies, his meth drinkers.
Yeah.
They're not giving him any respect, so his right-hand man, Jeff Lynne as I put him, gives them a good kick. Yeah. How long do we suspend our disbelief about who the right-hand man is?
So it's a blonde afro with a massive tash and glasses. But yeah, to be honest, straight away, even though I couldn't quite remember, apart from seeing Diana Rigg in the...
Yeah, I recognised her straight away, and I
recognised her voice.
Yeah.
But the two policemen, right at the beginning, when one of them goes, "Oh, it's up this way, mate," and the other one goes...
Yes.
And you go, oh, it's Diana Rigg, isn't it?
Yes. They're easily recognisable.
I know. And she does a big reveal at the end, and you go, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, you can't. Anticlimactic understates it slightly. 8 of the remaining critics of the critics circle are all assembled waiting for George, because he's the remaining one that hasn't turned up. Obviously, we know he's already been killed. They learn of his death. We get a brief intro of them all as they're all kind of interacting with each other. So we get a feeling for some of the people, but we'll kind of come to that later on. One of the circle, Peregrine, our lead, is tasked with writing a bit of a tribute for his fellow critic who's just died. So he goes to see the murder scene where he meets Inspector Boot and Sergeant Dog, who are investigating the murder. Peregrine spots an Edward Lionheart poster for Julius Caesar. That's it. That's it for that scene. There's nothing more to say.
I mean, there's not, to be honest, literally nothing really happened. It's yeah. Generally, this film's a bit. It's of its time.
It reminded me a bit of, maybe because it's British and it was in the 70s, a bit of a hammery Amicus.
Yeah.
It's almost like different stories strung together with one common story, and the different stories are how each one's going to get killed, really. Quite well-known, renowned actors in each section, like a kind of From Beyond the Grave kind of.
I did think,
Dr.
how did
Terry's
he get the
House
money?
of Horror.
I did think, how did he get the money for all these? But then, having said that, these were all very famous actors in the day.
Yeah, I think they were jumping on any project that came their way. Probably.
Yeah.
Actually, I should mention the first murder was a scene from Julius Caesar. And each of the murders we see for all the different critics is a different scene. So, Troilus and Cressida is the next one. We see critic Hector Snipe is lured into the theatre with the revelation that Lionheart is still alive and wants Hector to write of his resurrection. And he's set upon by all the meth heads. No, the meth drinkers.
Well, yeah, it's this bit's not too bad.
Gruesome-y.
He goes, because under the stage you get Jeff Lynne with the big blonde afro, in other words.
Yes, his assistant takes him down there.
So he goes down there and he starts reading all these bad reviews as like a scrapbook, and you kind of get the idea that the plot is he's going to kill every critic that made a bad review ever of him. Took the piss.
I mean, the story comes out that as part of like an award ceremony,
Yeah.
he was expecting to win, and it went to this kind of young up and coming actor, and that's kind of what set this all.
The guy that plays Snide, Dennis Price. Snipe, sorry. Well, but I looked at Snide because a lot of the names are a bit to do with what kind of person they are.
Yes, they're kind of
the surname. He, I'm pretty sure, was in Kind Hearts and
Coronets.
That's it. Yeah, which is a great film. So look for that. It's not a horror film.
Yes, black comedy like this. So Snidey Snipe is lured under the stage, and then he's thrust up onto the stage, and he is set upon, and he is speared, which is quite bloody.
I thought that was probably the most gruesome one out of the lot, because you get to see it.
Tony, and they don't stop there, because then his body's dragged along behind a horse. In fact,
at the funeral.
In fact, Hector's body, his dragged body, interrupts George Maxwell's funeral, as does a disguised Lionheart as a gravedigger. And again, he turns up in a lot of different places.
Turns up the ham.
Poorly disguised throughout the film.
So
some of his accents are, I mean, I can't go through them all.
Oh, he did an Irish one.
Irish, Scottish, there's a Birmingham. I was going to say an American. I thought,
that was Diana Rigg.
His assistant,
Sorry.
I was going to say he does a bad American one at one point, but obviously...
he has got a weird American accent, hasn't he? But...
I think it's because of his he's got quite a distinctive voice as well, hasn't he?
That's me not doing it.
I was going to say, I just thought Vincent had wandered in there.
Lick!
This film keeps going on and on. We've had 2 down, 7 to go. So we've been hacked to death, we've been speared and dragged. Tony, what would you do if a big trunk or chest turned up in your bedroom, a chest big enough to hold 2 people? Would you just go to sleep?
Well, I'd listen to my missus, who was obviously moaning at me, like Arthur Lowe gets.
This is the scene where Horace Sprout, Arthur Lowe, arrives home and finds that Mrs. Sprout, Joan Hickson...
I mean, she should have worked it out, being fucking...
Miss Marple.
Yeah,
you do the maths, Marple. to find a large chest anyway, just
If
delivered into their bedroom.
Right, are you ready for this? If I found a large chest in my bedroom, up the bar!
I'd be on it. Anyway, for anybody, not everybody will know who Arthur Lowe is. For anybody who doesn't know, Arthur Lowe is kind of a famous English actor who's always great in whatever he does.
Do you think you are giving me...
What follows is a badly sung version of the Dad's Army theme, which for copyright reasons has had to be replaced by a clip of me explaining why it was replaced by a clip of me.
Yeah, Joe Nixon, Mrs. Sprout says, well, kindly deal with it in the morning. Yes, dear. So they go to bed. In the dead of night when they're sleeping, Lionheart and his assistant, Jeff Lynne, well, they've obviously had themselves delivered to the house.
Who Jeff Lynne is?
Well, he's the lead. He's the man behind ELO.
He is ELO.
Electric
Light.
Hello,
he's ELO.
I don't really have to explain what ELO is, but yes, so he's got that kind of afro, dark glasses. So
he never had a blonde one though, did he?
No, he didn't. No.
I bet it'd be dead grey blonde if he'd stopped dying.
Ice white, like Jonesy.
What?
Lionheart and Jeff Lynne have had themselves delivered, and in the dead of night, they creep out. I've put in the dead of night twice. They creep out, and in the dead of night, they set about sawing a heavily sedated Horace's head off.
But they have to sedate his missus, which I did.
Yes.
This is the main scene I remember out of the entire film.
Yeah, it's
a grimmest one, I guess.
It's the grimmest, and it's one that's played quite comedic. They have almost like an operating scene where Lionheart, as he's sawing the head off, is having his brow mopped as the arterial blood kind of sprays up. So it's quite humorous.
And he goes all bowl, and then sort of looks at the camera and goes, I don't know. When there's blood squirting everywhere, she goes, can I have a bowl so I can mop this up? But unfortunately, after that, it's not
when Mrs. Sprout pushes him in the morning and his head rolls off, it's a delight.
Well, yeah, but what happens first? So this
the maid wanders in.
Fucking hell. So they've got a maid. The maid wanders in, sees Sprout with his head all wibbly, but it's not falling off.
Well, no, there's kind of blood around.
There's blood around.
She screeches.
She faints backwards, obviously, onto her mattress. Then his missus gets up.
Mrs. Sprout pushes him and his head rolls off. And then when the maid wakes up and screams, she sees Arthur's head on the floor, but obviously it's Arthur Lowe with his actual head. Because up until that point, the severed head is terrible. But obviously when she wakes up and spots the head, it's actually Arthur. It's Horace Sprout poking his head up through the floor. That's dead number 3. So 3 down, 6 to go.
Did you say dead number 3? Or
dead number 3.
Death.
3 down, 6 to go. Peregrine wakes up to find, inexplicably, Arthur's head mounted on one of his milk bottles.
That image, as a kid, I remember thinking, oh, that's not nice.
Yeah, but
it makes no fucking sense, does it?
No. I thought it was probably Arthur low-fat milk.
That's not bad for you, actually.
Boot and Dog, remember they're the police. Boot and Dog roll up and question Peregrine. As a result of these ongoing murders, they put the remaining 6 theatre critics under 24-hour protection, although they may as well have not bothered, to be honest.
I'm still thinking about Arthur low-fat milk.
Listen, it's Dickman next. Sweet. I forgot to mention, murder number 3 was from the Shakespearean play Cymbeline. Let's move on. It's Dickman time. Trevor Dickman, who's seduced by a lovely Dinah Rigg.
In a wig.
Yeah, are we meant to recognise her? God only knows.
I mean, this is a bit... I've already mentioned about the reveal at the end, which even does a bit of a music sting to, and you think...
I think this is just play for comedy. I don't think there's any moment you don't recognise her.
Yeah.
Trevor certainly has an eye for the ladies and is easily seduced into visiting the theatre to critique a production. He says, perhaps we could have a little supper afterwards, my dear. This is the Merchant of Venice. They put on a show, a pound of flesh. I've not really written much about this other than they reenact parts of the Merchant of Venice and they hold him, and then Lionheart appears and cuts out his
it cuts
heart
out his heart.
very easily as well.
Yeah, but then they weigh it because it's meant to be £1.
Yeah.
And then they obviously go, well, that's more than £1, and then chop a little bit off.
Yes.
But you don't really, on that one, you don't really see anything, even though the other ones have been quite grim.
I think that would have involved too many effects and I think they just hide it away, and the gory bit's meant to be the bloody heart at the end of it. So that's it. It's not much to say about that scene. That's dead number 4. 4 down, 5 to go. They're going through them very quickly. Peregrine, our lead critic, has solved the mystery that it's Lionheart. And then, as he explains this to Boot and Dog, we have a flashback to explain the motive and how the critics voted for the up-and-coming actor William Woodstock. The Quidditchers ridicule him as he goes on one of his Bard's monologues.
Fuck it.
It goes on for a while, doesn't it? As he's on the balcony.
Yeah. Well, his daughter then appears. Because I thought, this is a setup to fake his death. But then there is another flashback later on, if I'm all right saying this.
Yeah, I mean, that tells him how he survived his...
Yeah. But then, so he plummets, he just goes, he's got his award, makes a big sign, he goes, I own this award.
I'm not sure. I did actually, as he was reciting it, and they were kind of ridiculing him through the window, I thought that scene was okay, really.
Well, I quite liked it as well, because they keep going up to the window and going, "Ooh, what are you doing?" Like,
laughing and joking.
And you can't hear them.
Yeah, but you can just hear him reciting the Shakespearean
So that was
play.
all right. And when he sort of plummets out as well, it's not too much of a shock dummy or Benny Hill dummy, as we would call it.
I thought it was almost an Olympic quality dive.
Yeah,
the way it
was good. Dinah Rigg, his daughter, Edwina, comes in and goes, "Oh, you're just making it worse for yourself, don't
embarrass yourself.
Don't embarrass it." And you go, "Oh, right, so, now." So that he's faking his death so he can do all these murders. But then she just happens to have come along, and then he goes into a monologue, and she does nothing while he's about to jump off the balcony.
Well, she goes out and tries to console him, but then in rage and shame, do you like this? This is Shakespearean. And then in rage and shame, he casts himself off the balcony into the Thames.
I've cast myself off the balcony.
Oh, and then the heart of Dickman arrives in the post for Peregrine. A beating... No, it's not. A still beating heart.
To be honest, if you pause it, which unfortunately I did for some reason, it's like a plasticky heart with a bit of jam on it.
Yeah, it's a jam-covered heart.
You know.
It's a horrifying jam-covered heart. And then in rage and shame, he casts himself upon the Thames.
Yeah.
Richard III next. Oliver Larding arrives at a specially arranged wine. He likes his wine, doesn't he? So Oliver goes in for this wine testing. All of Lionheart's stooges are in there already.
And he doesn't realise this, does he? As well.
Well,
this
no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't necessarily
yeah, but
recognise
I quite like this bit because he has a few wine tasting bits, and then he turns around. They're all like meth heads.
They're all drunk.
Methylated spirits, sorry. Not
meths drinkers.
Yeah.
They're all there, pissed up, so he doesn't really suspect anything, I suppose. We get another long monologue from Lionheart that results in a pissed up Ollie being drowned in a barrel of, I put, suspiciously clear coloured wine. Very quickly as well, he dies very quickly. But
that's because you don't want to actually kill someone.
And the tally is, listen, 5 down, 4 to go. We had Richard III. We're going through them, aren't we? Yeah. 5 down, 4 to go. Peregrine. What a scene this is. Let's get into it. This is Romeo and Juliet. Peregrine arrives for his regular fencing session, only to find that his only opponent is a masked Lionheart.
It must be on steroids because he can do backflips, run off
fucking
ropes.
This fucking...
Jump on trampolines.
I'm telling you. Yeah, this film, it goes all Errol Flynn on us. I liked it. Utter bollocks. I suspect Vincent didn't somersault off a trampoline in this scene.
No.
He then tells Peregrine how he survived. So again, we have another flashback where he explains how when, in a fit of rage and shame, he cast himself off the balcony into the Thames, he was nursed back to health by London's homeless meth drinkers, where they formed a gang. they formed a gang.
I mean, well, it's of course, again, I'm not going to criticise it for being bullshit, because most horror films, I don't think they have to make sense. But in this particular case, he's face down in the water for a long time. They drag him out, mainly to nick the award that he's still clutching for the gold.
They want to steal it, but they do then nurse him and they nurse him back to health with meths.
Yeah. Yeah, he has a bit of it, starts choking, and they give him some more.
Mysteriously, Lionheart lets Peregrine go, only with the threat that he may come back and kill him at any time. It will be his choice. He's completely got him under control. Next scene. So we had a bit of Romeo and Juliet then.
Well, that's what he says.
We have...
the sword fighting bit was quite good.
I quite liked it. It was good fun, wasn't it?
But I didn't think it was the end of the film. Even though, but then I looked and went, oh, it's only 1 hour 4.
I mean, yeah, this film's 1 3/4 hours. I think it's about 10 minutes too long, but yes. So we carry on because we've got more Shakespearean plays to go over, haven't we? The next one's Othello.
Keep that
Yeah.
I like the way it's up, yeah. Well, I didn't know it would work.
We should have. You meant to have a trump card, aren't you? Top trump card.
No, fucking off alone. You do, you think
you are kidding with that paper mache head, Mr. Hitler. If you think old England's won.
Right.
Next. Othello.
Othello.
No, it's
Othello.
Othello.
Not. It's Othello. No, it's not.
Othello.
It's not. It's not an F. It's Othello.
Othello.
Oh.
Is it Spanish? Othello. 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 Othello.
No, it's not Othello. There's no O-R in it. It's Othello.
Othello.
Oh.
Is that Othello? No.
Minute 25.
Well, we've had
25.
5 down, 4 to go. We've had Peregrine
Falcon.
with his Errol Flynn. Now we go to Othello. Othello.
Oh, I don't care.
Othello. Solomon Saltery is informed anonymously that his wife is having an affair. A heavily disguised Lionheart has been massaging his wife, Diana Dawes.
Heavily disguised.
Yeah.
Oh, Diana Dawes, did you say?
Yeah. Lionheart's been planning this for weeks because he's been massaging her. Solomon, in a fit of jealousy and rage,
He's gripping the banister at one point. Woo! Literally, he was gripping them. He was coming up the stairs and gripped the banister. It wasn't meant to be rude.
He thinks it's more than just a harmless massage, and he carried away in a fit of rage, and he smothers his wife to death.
It's a bit over the top, isn't it?
And as Lionheart, heavily disguised, leaves the building, he informs the police.
Well, yeah, the police that are waiting outside.
Protection.
Protection.
So Solomon is carted off to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Yeah, and the idea is, because he's killed everyone else, the idea is he'll die in prison. But out of all of them, he still does all right.
He gets off scot-free, really.
Well, you're saying prison scot-free?
You've obviously not spent time in the slammer. What the fuck was Vincent's accent in that scene? Is all I wrote about it.
Was it Irish?
It was an accent.
Yes.
6 down, 3 to go. Henry VI, Part 1 next. Chloe Moon, our 7th critic, arrives at a hair salon and agrees to let Butch, Lionheart, in another great disguise, do her hair. He sports another great big afro.
They share an afro in this one, don't they?
Yes, they share it amongst themselves.
And he's camping it up massively, which...
Yes.
By the way, I mean, not that I care one way or another, but was Vincent Price gay?
No, because he met his third wife on the set of the film. I think it is... I can't remember who in the film. I think Dinah Rigg introduced him to his third wife on the film. No, I mean, yeah.
It's the third wife.
Yeah. So Chloe Moon gets fried. Yes,
they put these special electro rollers into her hair.
They hook her up to the grid and fry her. and burn her.
Yeah, the stake.
And burn her the witch, because she's meant to be like Joan of Arc in Henry
the
VI part 1.
And a very average makeup on her face.
Yes, she kind of ends up frazzled.
Yeah, she's had a face peel.
7 down, 2 to go. Titus Andronicus next.
No, it's just the way I'm sitting.
Yeah, thank you. Edwina hears from her dead dad at this point, and Peregrine agrees to go and meet him with her. Meanwhile, Lionheart is scheming how he can get Meredith Meridew. Now, if we're talking about kind of people doing like a camp character, a 70s camp character, this is it.
Yeah,
Meredith
he's even got a
Meridew.
pink sort of wig or bouffant on the top of his head.
And a pink suit, hasn't he? Or a white suit.
And he's got 2 poodles, so it's very much a cliche, but I'm not letting off the 70s, but, you know, that's the way it was.
So Lionheart is scheming how he can get Meredith Meridew away from his round-the-clock protection to knock him off. Lionheart succeeds and breaks into Meredith. Essentially, he fashions a mask that looks nothing like Lionheart for one of his stooges to wear, so he can distract the police away from Meredith, so then they can go into the house, and with him and his crew disguised as French chefs,
the accent.
They force feed Meredith his own beloved pooches baked in a pie, poodle pie.
Yes, and I've done a great drawing.
I like the drawing of a pie with poodles on it.
Yeah, I've put crosses on their eyes because it even seemed like they had. But he's enjoying the pie, and then this was a bit. Again, they could have made more of it. He's eating the pie and goes, "Oh, it's really nice, really nice." And then there's a hair in it, which obviously the dog.
We should stress at this point, Meredith thinks, strangely enough, that these people that broke into his house are genuinely, he's part of some kind of TV chef program. So he's quite enthusiastically tasting the pie and enjoying it until the reveal is that he's eating his own dogs.
Yeah,
which is a horrible idea in itself.
But it's based on the play
Titus and Andronicus, where she eats the children in a pie.
Yeah.
Yes,
which is not great, I guess.
But then the scene where he's forced and they...
Oh yeah, it's quite bad. A big brass funnel
is jammed into his mouth,
and then it's and then they just put they just grab big gobs of this white, creamy poodle pie. And then with another stick, just keep shoving it down into his gob.
And again, that was a scene that 30 years ago when I watched it, I remember it being a bit grimmer than it actually was.
Yeah.
It was quite quick. 8 down, 1 to go. So we're down to our final critic, which is of course our main lead, Peregrine.
And his second name is
Falcon.
No, Devlin. So obviously he's meant to be like the main horrible devil gig bag critic, so that's the idea, I guess. It's a bit obvious, but there you go.
So we now continue with the fact that Peregrine is going to meet Edwina so they can go and meet Edward Kendall Sheridan Lionheart. It all goes very wrong. I mean, they've got this terrible scheme the police have where they are going to trace him with some kind of tracker.
Yeah, the tracker's the size of a car in itself. And then there's Eric Sykes. By the way, Eric Sykes is in this. Underutilised beyond fucking belief.
Criminally underutilised.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Plank? But The Plank's ace. And he's in it. So look for that. But he's used in this, and you would think it was shit from this.
Well, he does a few kind of comedic turns, but generally he's underutilised.
Having said that, the last bit is quite funny, with where he's on the walkie-talkie.
Yes.
So he's on the walkie-talkie, so that he's hiding in the boot or the trunk, as you guys might say.
And his name's... Oh, the other policeman is Boot.
There you go.
Yes, there you go. But he's Dog, which is the dog. The characters are called Inspector Boot and Sergeant Dog. So there you go.
Well, no, I don't get the dog bit.
Well, he eats a pie full of dog. So there you go.
The sergeant does.
Well, no, he doesn't, but, you know.
For fuck's sake. Right. Anyway, so Eric Sykes Boot, who's in the boot, and then he makes a radio thing, goes, I definitely can hear a train. I can hear a train. When they've legged it, so Edwina's knocked him out, and they're now going to
Yeah,
wherever.
so Peregrine's been taken away.
Fortunately, Boot is left in the boot of a car that's now obviously on the crossroads of the
Yes.
train.
That's the last we hear.
Yeah, you hear
In.
hear it from Dog's point of view going, where are you? He goes, I can definitely hear a train. Then just goes, but it's played massively for comic effect. It's an unusual film because it's generally, most of the time, a comedy, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a black comedy that...
I don't even know whether it's that black.
Well, the people are all being murdered.
Yeah.
There's a
Well, okay,
black
then.
feel to it in some ways. So then it all goes very wrong as Peregrine ends up getting bopped on the head. When he wakes up, he's tied to a chair as knives move ever closer to his eyes. He's forced to watch Lionheart reenact the award ceremony where he felt so...
What are you doing with your hand?
when Lionheart was robbed of his award.
Oh, yeah. But it's quite funny, this bit.
I like this. I like the fact that Lionheart and his stooges were all carrying kind of masks, caricature masks of the critics.
And they were really good. It's like Gerald Scarfe had done them because they were like obscure, not obscure, what's it called when it's not quite how you look? It's
caricatured. It's like caricatured,
yeah,
and they were kind of like leaning over the camera, leaning towards the camera.
Yeah,
I really like that. The shocking reveal at this point that Jeff Lynne is actually Edwina.
There's no way you wouldn't work this fucker out. Surprise! For fuck's sake. Like you say, not in a fucking million years could you have not worked out. I worked it out from about 2 minutes in.
To quote the film, as Lear said at his greatest moment, never, 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 never.
Well, that's what he says, isn't it?
Yeah.
Peregrine Devlin.
Peregrine Falcon.
About, because he's trying to force him, goes, now say you've won the award. And he goes, no.
No, I'm not saying that.
Even with two red hot pokey knives about to slip into his eyeballs. He goes, no.
Because he's not going to admit it, because the award went to Woodstock and Peregrine will not change his decision, even though he's going to get his eyes popped out.
Out of all the twatty critics, one is the youngest. Two, he's the one that's least pleading for his life at the end.
He's sticking to his decision,
guns.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I respect him for that.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with him, because the one thing we will, like I said earlier on, the idea is they all say the character Edward. Yeah, no, it is.
Lionheart, yeah.
Edward Lionheart, Vincent Price character, is really hammy in his acting of Shakespeare and in general. And God bless Vincent Price.
He was.
He was quite hammy. Yeah. He was very big.
Yes.
Very big.
Larger than life, wasn't it? He was really...
And I don't know whether he was trying to be even bigger in this to say, yeah, I'll ham it up then.
Yeah.
But if he then has said in real life, from what you said earlier on, that he thought this was the best opportunity for him to do... You'd
have thought he'd have been doing it
seriously,
yeah. But
maybe he was told, no, you've got to do it bigger, because the idea is he's a shit actor.
But either way, it worked quite well. So if you just took it at face value, it worked in that way quite well. Police sirens blare. So Edward starts to burn the theatre down. I read up, it did say that when they burnt that, it got out of control and they did actually have to call in the fire brigade during the filming because it got out of hand.
So this is a bit where I was more interested. I thought, Jesus Christ, they're literally setting this old disused theatre, which it must have been, on fire. The bit where he gets the torches... Vincent Price character gets torches.
It starts to burn the theatre down.
He throws one into one of the boxes, and you see Vincent Price himself
kind of reel back.
Shit.
Yes.
But his eyes goes poof, and the whole thing goes up. Nowadays, you be CGI, or they have these gas pipes with loads of holes in.
Yeah, so it's it's controlled. Yeah.
There, you could see. But even when he was putting these torches on the curtains, they'd obviously doused him in petrol, because it just went bang.
It went woof, and the kind of whole theatre went up. Lionheart knows he's about to be caught, so
I think
he's
Vincent
kind of...
Price is thinking, "Fuck me, the old pissing place
so
on fire."
he says, "Right, we're all going to go." I mean, at one point, Edwina, his daughter, gets knocked over the head, and she falls.
She gets bombed.
She dies. The homeless people.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the meth heads. they all go AWOL, really. And she's
Yeah,
going,
crazy.
help my father. You know, one of them grabs the award and then just bonks her. And I've said bonk because it's not that hard.
Bonk.
Bonks her right on the top of the head. And she dies from it. Oh, okay.
Well, you get bonked on the head. Have you had a good bonking on your head?
I've had all kinds of...
So, yeah, Lionheart, surrounded by flames, carrying his daughter, climbs up onto the roof of the theatre.
Yeah, but he does it from the outside for some
Yeah, I
reason.
didn't realise. I couldn't quite work out how he climbed up the outside,
Like King Kong,
and then dropped into the theatre. But maybe it's an open air theatre.
but also Benny Hill dummy when he's carrying her and her head's like doing this.
Yes, it's quite a wobbly dummy.
Yeah, but it's very awful.
Last time when I carried a dead body, it didn't look like that. That's all I'm saying. So he's surrounded by flames. He climbs up onto the roof of the theatre. It's terribly dramatic, carrying his daughter who's been clonked on the head, and he ends up falling to his death.
In the middle of the theatre somehow.
He
jumps
climbs
through the
outside
roof.
as all the crowds watch from below, and he ends up falling back into the theatre and dies. Peregrine has obviously by this point been rescued by the police.
And he's watching this, and you're going to say the quote, because this almost spoiled the entire film for me.
Peregrine leans over to Boot and says, "You must admit, he did know how to make an exit." And he smiles at the policeman and then exits off to the left-hand side of the camera as well, as if that was the final line. Well, that was the final line of the film.
But even Boot goes,
"Oh, what a cunt."
He didn't say that, but in his eyes you can think.
You could
in his
see
eyebrows.
In Milo O'Shea's eyes, I could tell what a...
But then it cuts back to the flames and then it just stops and you go,
but then
that's the last line.
But then the really nice music kicks in, quite melodic as well, and then that's it. And the music doesn't fit in with the kind of comedy.
It's an awful last line. They could have made it more tragic, you know what I mean?
Well, I think because it been done in such a spoofy way, I think it was a bit late to do that, really. But
it deserved better than that.
Poor old Edward. Meredith, Sheridan, Lionheart.
I mean...
The end. Cut to Foot Corner. This is what it said. Despite the film's spoofy nature, the BBFC originally cut some of the close-up shots of Merridew's murder and Miss Moon's murder. So the dog pie and the hair salon, they originally cut some of the close-up shots.
Of all of the ones to cut, they're probably the one. Well, maybe the pie a bit. But...
I mean, there was more because it was distress, suffering, prolonged ones. Obviously, fully uncut versions have since been released. Let's review the film. Short and sweet, a good bit of fun. I haven't seen it for 30 years, and I've said this earlier. I remember it leaving a bit of an impression on me, but it's obviously nowhere near as brutal as I recall. Both Vincent Price and Dinah Rigg, they both said it was their favourite film, which I kind of get in a way.
I get Vincent Price, Dinah Rigg.
Yeah.
I haven't said that she didn't make many films, so fair enough.
A good cast, good music,
amazing cast,
good bit of fun. I think it kind of works. I think you could do worse watching it. It would pass an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, slightly too long, I thought.
Yeah.
So I gave it a generous 6.5. Yeah. I quite enjoyed it. It kind of ticks along. And I mean, you've got 8 murders. So even if you're just going to watch those 8 set pieces, it kind of moves at a pace. So yeah. Oh, okay. 6 out of 10 for me. I think you could do worse, I put
7.5.
Wow.
I know, it's quite high. Because I think it's of its time. That's a problem.
Massively, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a bit stilted in the dialogue and the way it's filmed sometimes. But some of the shots are really good. The dialogue, when it isn't Shakespeare, not that, is not so great. But I like all the British actors being in it. And it reminds me, like I think he was saying, of Amicus and Hammer Horror.
Yeah,
things.
It really did remind me of that.
There was bits as a kid I remember thinking they were scary. When I watched it again, what I put down in the end near my movie rating is it's a gory comedy. It's not a horror film because there's no point really that it's ever scary.
I think the only bit where it's a bit tense was that first.
Yes, I agree
with the squatters.
Yeah.
I think that kind of generated a little bit, but then I suppose when it delivers it that early on and then it never kind of delivers any other scenes that equal that, it kind of like it fades slightly, doesn't it?
You know, would I watch it again? Which is always a thing I think about. I watched it when I was a kid. I've watched it now. Probably not. I think I've seen it now. It's a good film. Is it a good horror film? I would say it's not a horror film. But, you know, any film with Vincent Price.
Michael J. Lewis, shout out to him because he did the music as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. And it was the newspaper was the day before I was born. I would really recommend it.
I really would watch it. I think we've rated it higher than some of the shit we've said watch anyway. But the other thing, this is a bit that I don't know where I disagree, because I'm obviously agreeing if I get 7.5. But generally, critics love this fucking film.
On kind of Rotten Tomatoes as well and IMDb and stuff, it gets kind of 7s, 8s.
Yeah.
Really, and like 90%, 80%.
I said 7.5.
I've gone 6.5. I enjoyed it.
As usual, if you like this, subscribe. I don't think I've ever said that. Have I? Maybe I have.
We have
if you
now.
like it? Yeah, we have now. Subscribe.
Thanks everyone for listening and see you next time.
Cheers.